Hello, friends. Welcome to Binge O'Clock, a podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle and Joy, and I've seen almost nothing.
But you have seen
And
Galaxy Quest.
had seen Galaxy Quest before we watched it for this podcast episode.
Yes.
Watching it more recently, I have a better understanding and a more appreciation for the movie, because when I first saw this movie, I had not seen a single Star Trek.
Right. I remember that.
I just thought it was a funny movie about actors going to space.
I mean, it is that. Like, I think that's also the genius of this movie, is that you don't necessarily have to be a Star Trek fan. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's even funnier if you are, but like it transcends fandom, really. Mm-hmm. And it's such a beautiful, loving parody of a lifelong television series.
Yes, but see, now that I have seen some, but not all, of the Star Trek
context. You have been given context.
I've been given context. I can appreciate the tropes, and I feel the love in the movie, and I like that.
Yeah. No, this movie was made with so much love. And and before I forget, Nella is not joining us on this episode, but she wanted everyone to know that the reason she's not joining us on this episode is because she's building a Star Trek character to play in an RPG. So she is with us in spirit. In doing the research for this movie, I also found out that there was a subset of Star Trek fans who weren't really very pleased when they heard this movie was coming out, because they thought it was going to be a very much like poke fun, make fun of the franchise. Mm-hmm. And then when it got closer and they realized what it was about, and they were like, oh, we sorely misjudged you.
Oh, it's a tribute.
It is. This movie is a tribute. For those of you not familiar with Galaxy Quest, first of all, highly recommend. Please do watch this movie. It came out in 1999. The director is Dean Parasot, and the story was by David Howard, and the screenplay written by David Howard and Robert Gordon. Basically, a summary of the movie is actors of a popular science fiction show, Galaxy Quest, are abducted by some well-meaning aliens to save their dying civilization from a madman. And that's it. That's the thing.
That's the whole thing. This is your favorite kind of bad guy. This is a villain who is bad because he is bad.
He just likes to watch the world burn. He has no backstory to even really speak of. They, even when they're talking about like the history of their civilization, they sort of mention, and then he showed up at the worst possible time while we were dealing with this big upheaval in our civilization. And like basically the idea being he just took advantage of all of us because we're a very trusting alien race.
So I guess he just plows through galaxies, wiping out alien races.
Yeah. His name is Saris. He is I wrote it down. I wrote it down. Where did I put it? A Fatu Cray.
Yes.
He is a general in the Fatu Cray. And I was like, but is that a race of alien? Is that his
You know hierarchy? What I'm about to say. They didn't explain it.
That we should put on a t-shirt.
That should absolutely be on a t-shirt.
We should put that one along with 400%. How you knew this guy was particularly bad? Well, I mean, we're not going to do a full plot summary, friends. We're just going to kind of talk about things as they come up, because Danielle and I both really love this movie. Mm-hmm. So strap in. But like, how you know he's like a really bad guy is I believe it's the second time we technically see him, like the second time the crew sees him, like the second time Jason sees him, when they're showing the footage of him torturing the previous commander. Mm-hmm. And right after that, the crew is obviously very upset and like, we're not really here to die, so maybe we should peace, like any sane human being would do. Right after that, they then see him holding the head of his lieutenant because he didn't shoot fast enough. And so you know instantly two things, that obviously he tortures and kills his enemies, but he also tortures and kills his underlings.
Yes, that is accurate.
This is a very bad guy.
Very bad guy. Also, you know, genocide.
I mean, there's the genocide.
There's also the genocide.
There's also the genocide. Look, the genocide comes up later. Well, because Jason is that guy. Like, Jason Nesbitt is that guy who, like, didn't even ask of, like, why are you on the run from this person? Mm-hmm. It's just like, well, actually, we have no more civilization and we're just roaming around space.
Yep. Asked literally no questions. Was just so jazzed to be in space, which would not have been my reaction.
Well, and as we saw, was not everyone's reaction. Like, when they first show up there, it's like a horror show.
That's my favorite thing is when they're all just initially in shock as the tentacled beings are poking and prodding and they're buzzing instruments. And then all of a sudden, they all burst into screams.
Well, it is particularly Sam Rockwell's character.
Yes,
I believe it is Sam Rockwell. It is Guy. It is
no
Guy
last name.
Who no last name. Who leads the charge on that one? Do
for
the
sure.
other ones scream?
No, they do. They do. Just not as loud as him.
I missed that.
And then the camera pans over and it just focuses in on his scream. And then, of course, Tony Shalhoub shows up.
I know. No, he's my favorite. Fred Kwan is my favorite, showing up there and just spending. Okay, so I was telling Danielle, like, I've seen this movie a million times, but what got me was, like, figuring out a little bit of the trivia and a little bit of research to, like, sprinkle in little tidbits. So there was a bunch of stuff I picked up while I was looking into this movie. One of the things, like, one of the reasons that Tony Shalhoub plays Fred Kwan that way, where basically he's just stoned the entire time.
I mean, he's eating in almost every scene we see him in.
I'm pretty sure he's not even sure he traveled to space when he lands in space.
There's that one moment of panic that he gets where it all comes crashing down.
Well, he gets exactly one moment of panic when he's the one who has to operate something.
Yes.
But yeah, so there are a couple of things about him in particular. He chose that because apparently he found out that while David Carradine was doing one of his longtime roles, one of the roles everybody knows David Carradine for, he was apparently, like, super stoned during.
I mean, I don't even.
I wasn't
know
a
who
huge
this
fan
is.
of David Carradine. Gotta say,
I really don't know who this is.
Did you watch the Kill Bill movies?
Oh, yeah, I did actually.
He's Bill.
Oh, all right. Well, that's why I don't know who this is.
He played Bill. I want to say it was like one of the TV shows he was in. He sort of has some questionable stuff. I personally, not to go off on too big of a tangent, but the short answer of why I'm not the biggest fan of David Carradine is I felt like he took jobs away from Asian martial artists.
Oh.
He was basically a white guy that got cast in.
Okay.
And I wasn't really here for it. I mean, like, he was also part of that 70s thing of, like, bringing martial artists into the, like, martial arts in general into the country. And, like, God bless white people. They're like, they see another white person doing it and then they get interested in it. And then maybe they actually learn something about a culture. Like, I don't know.
Right.
But,
like, you know, this doesn't forgive him in any way, but he certainly wasn't the only one who was doing that.
Exactly. He was a product of an atmosphere.
Yes.
Where he was a product of a system that allowed him to get these jobs. Anyway, we're not here to talk about David Carradine. But he apparently spent almost his entire run of a particular television series stoned off his gourd.
Oh.
And so that's one of the reasons Fred Kwan did this. I mean, Tony Shalhoub made this choice to have Fred Kwan just completely smash the whole time. While we're on the subject of Fred Kwan, can I talk about one of the tropes that I mentioned to you before we started recording? So what's funny is watching this now, in the year 2021, I sort of sat there and I went, was this another issue of like whitewashing? Because my brain heard Fred Kwan and I was like, but Tony Shalhoub is playing this character.
Right. But that was 100% intentional, I assume.
It was. From what I understand, the trivia commentary basically said it was meant to be a play on the fact that occasionally in Star Trek there's a character who is a nationality from a certain place, these things, but the actors playing them are almost never that nationality.
Yep.
This is the first one I believe was George Takei playing Sulu. We also had, Khan, like as in The Wrath of Khan, where he was supposed to be Indian, but we had a Mexican actor playing him.
Cue the eye roll.
They actually did it wrong with Khan twice.
Oh, yes, they did. Yes, they did.
They got it wrong twice. They had an opportunity to do the better, and they didn't.
They had an opportunity to fix it in post, to reflect, to put in an iota of thought.
I want it to be fair. I always want to see Alexander Siddig in like everything.
Yeah.
I also fan cast him to play Doctor Strange. By the way, another Benedict Cumberbatch role. I'm just like, what if we just had more Alexander Siddig playing everybody? I would be okay with this plan. Just putting it out there.
Oh, Bashir. I love him.
Picard is probably the longest running one, which was, he's British playing a Frenchman. Super British. Like, the man cannot hide how British he is. Anyway, but it's meant to be a play on that, because even in the movie, Fred Kwan is like, but I'm not even Fred Kwan. Fred Kwan's not even my real name. I love Tony Shalhoub in this movie. He's one of my favorites. He's one of my favorites anyway. But
While we're on the subject of Fred Kwan, because why not? How do you feel about his relationship with the female alien? Whose name...
Thermian female.
Thermian female, whose name I cannot pronounce.
Yeah, listeners, we tried. We tried to look it up again before recording, and honestly, I would have to watch the entire movie again, because I'm pretty sure every character says her name differently.
And they only say her name maybe twice, because she's basically a non-character in this movie. Know. When she first shows up, her translation device is broken, so she can't even speak. She's just smiling widely at everything, which granted is what most of that alien race does anyway.
I think I remember when I first saw it that I got nervous that she would be one of those actors who just never got any lines. And then I was so happy to be wrong about that when suddenly she's talking in the next scene.
Thank goodness. At least she gets to do something.
I know.
And I mean, sure, she has some level of agency in the film. She gets to decide to have tentacle fun with Fred Kwan. She gets to decide to go to Earth with him.
I think I'm very happy for them.
And
look, I'm not against their relationship, but at the same time, it felt weirdly. Again, the whole thing is like a trope on the stereotypes of whatever. It did feel a little bit like, inevitably, if this were to happen in Star Trek, he wouldn't be bringing her back to Earth. He would be leaving her behind, and like that would be the thing, because it would have been in one episode, one-off romance.
Right. But this isn't that.
But this isn't that. He brings her.
And I think that would have been more aligned with the tropes as I understand them had she been interested in the commander.
That is 100% correct.
Yes. But since
he tries to hit on her very briefly in the beginning, but when she makes that sound, he instantly... He is no longer interested.
And this is how you know that Jason and Commander Taggart are not the same person.
Yes. Correct. Okay, so Nella and I have this theory about how James T. Kirk is not actually a womanizer. We try to have a different take on it because a lot of times whenever you see him hitting on women, there's a bunch of caveats in all of those scenarios. the women who he's had like sort of mutual dating relationships with, they're all super smart. They're all like doctors or like the best in their field or like really book smart. Like they are very like, these are the women he's dated outside of meeting on an alien planet somewhere. Whenever these things show up in the series as like they land on an alien planet and then there's a woman and then maybe or maybe not she gets seduced by the captain, inevitably there's an element of danger where you can interpret that as him trying to distract them long enough to save his crew.
Right. He's a honeypot.
Exactly. He's a honeypot.
No, I hear you.
Which I wish more people saw it this way, because I feel so bad when they're like, oh, but James C. Kirk, he's such a womanizer. And I'm like, but is he though? Is he?
Listen, I'm not here to judge. It's not going to bother me extremely either way.
Right? I mean, it was also like the late 60s. So my brain is also like, you're telling me in the time of free love. But yeah, and I've always like, I don't know, I've always strongly disliked that trope whenever people bring it up, because I'm always like, but was he? But yeah, like Taggart 100% is, because again, it's a loving parody of a thing, and like you can't not make that joke about James T. Kirk,
not.
Especially in 1999. Like we were still firmly planted in the he's a womanizer, he doesn't care at all about these women.
That's the trope.
That's the trope. That's the trope. To circle back around, I am fine with their relationship just because it is very obviously consensual.
Yes, that's what I mean. Totally. She was very into it. He was very into it. Yep.
I'm wondering how all of that will literally work now that they're both on Earth.
How what will work? Like
their relationship? Does she always wear the uniform? Can she change clothes in that thing?
Of course she can. Oh, I assume. Why wouldn't she be able to change clothes?
Okay, so here's the thing. The Thermians fashion themselves after the extras of the crew, which all look like that. Like if you look at the old footage of Galaxy Quest, they all looked brunettes, very pasty white skin, all the same uniform. I'm pretty sure it was like the same 6 extras every time. So they all look like the Thermians specifically all look like that because they're meant to be like the generic crew. So would she program in other clothes?
Well, no. Here's actually where I think the problem is. I think that if she were still out in space with all of the other Thermians and had access to their technology, she could absolutely change her clothes, her face, her hair, whatever she wanted to change, because she would have everything at her disposal to reprogram the device.
Right.
But she doesn't have that technology on Earth. So I think that if she cannot change her clothing, it's because she doesn't have access to the tech anymore. And if the device ever breaks, then they're in trouble.
I see what you're saying. She definitely has that one device.
Yes.
And it's
much
to
like
what
our
it's set to.
Fringe shapeshifters. There you go. We found a connection.
And they are attuned to you specifically. I like that we can make a connection to Fringe and a connection to Fear.com, because this movie, much like Fear.com, was supposed to be rated R.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, to be fair, Fear.com was supposed to be NC-17.
Yes.
But, like, I don't exactly know. There was a lot in the trivia that was like, by the way, there's a bunch of these scenes that got deleted. There's a couple of like questionable seduction scenes between Lieutenant Madison and Saris's crew, which I don't know.
Ooh, interesting.
So it was apparently supposed to be a sex scene.
It was supposed to be a much racier film.
I think so. I think it was supposed to be more adult.
Okay.
And then DreamWorks wanted to make it more family friendly. And apparently there was a sequel that was written, but the writers actually kept that in their back pocket, because once they saw how much they cut, they got nervous about doing a sequel. And I was like, but you're telling me we could have had a sequel while Alan Rickman was still alive, and now I'm upset.
Oh, I know. Pour one out for Alan Rickman.
Always.
That would have been beautiful. Well,
I know.
So wait, you know that there were racy scenes that were cut. Was it also supposed to be more violent? in terms of the torture and the killing?
That's a great question.
Maybe.
I don't know. But, so there's, everybody knows, like, the really big voiceover for that one curse that Sigourney Weaver does, where well, screw that. There's that one, which is very obviously dubbed over, right?
Yes.
I counted at least 2 other times that they dubbed over questionable language. I almost said Laredo. Tommy Weber says, what we hear is him say something like,
I do not have the kind of ears that hear this information.
No, it's fine. Well, the thing is it's the eyes, because if you see their lips not meet it, like I know they switch damn, and I know they switch the S word, and I know I'm a swear jar myself, and they obviously do the F word. There were at least 3 times where they dubbed it over. So I was like, well, rated R, they had very specific things that you could say under an R rating. Like I think you got 1 F-bomb and like you could technically still hold it. But like they also had the S word. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure in 1999, you couldn't even get away with 1 F-bomb.
Right.
Because they were a lot more strict with language.
No, that's fair.
So I know there was language. I know, but the funny thing is it matches for the show. I just never noticed that there was more than the, well, screw that. Because the screw that is so obvious.
I'll need to go back obvious. Or something.
You're not looking at anyone else but her mouth.
But I feel like my eyes are often so distracted by everything happening around the characters. Plus, I have to watch movies with the closed captioning on. Otherwise, I can't understand what anyone is saying. So frequently, my eyes are also darting down to that every time someone speaks. Fair. So I do think I just...
No, that's fair. That's fair. The funny thing is, like, when I saw that in the movie theater, my brain went, is the ship not allowing you to curse? Because...
It's like being in the good place.
Yeah, like, did they build it so that you do just say fork all the time? No? Maybe? It's 100% being in the good place. The ship itself is the good place. There.
There it is.
There's your crossover. There's your crossover. But there were a couple other scenes. There are other deleted scenes, which I've actually never watched. Whenever I searched for it on Google before recording this podcast, there was a weird thing that was like, would you like to watch the uncut whatever? And I was like, but that can't possibly exist. Because I would have heard way more about it. And you know what I mean? Like, unless it's like
it was never available to the public. Otherwise, there would be information about it everywhere. Yeah.
Otherwise, I should be able to see it. Like, otherwise, I should be able to choose if I want to watch the theatrical release or the director's cut. Like, I don't think it exists. My only thought is, like, maybe one of the fans put back in all the deleted scenes that they could find. There is another one where, like, somebody remembers Guy's last name. So, like, there's a bunch of dropped scenes where it's, like, callbacks to jokes. Where Guy is like, I don't have a last name. And someone was like, oh, I just remembered your last name is Fleegman. And we actually get it, like, before the end credits. Yeah. And there's a couple other ones where, like, the one that I really liked, talking about Fred Kwan, was his... So, Fred Kwan doesn't know anything in the engine room. You know, like, whenever he keeps calling up with the, like, hey, guys, they're telling me this. There were scenes where they were supposed to be asking him, hey, Tech Sergeant Shen, what do we do? And he goes, well, what do you think we should do? And the Thermians think it's a test. So they like try to figure out the thing to do, and then it ends up being right. And that's when he turns to them and he's like, you guys were right again. Let's hug it out.
Group hug. I'm very, both of those decisions that you just listed, I think were the right decision to make. I like that Guy does not have a last name for the entire movie until the ending credits.
Until the end, I know.
I think that was fabulous.
I also thought that was fabulous.
It never stops being funny every time he mentions it throughout the movie. I'm the guy who dies to show that things are serious.
God, did you guys even watch the show?
At first, I thought I was going to die on the ships because I stayed on the ship, and so I decided to go with you, but now I think I'm going to die on the planet because I decided to go with you.
I love
We need to leave
Guy.
before one of those things kills Guy.
Kills Guy. That is like one of my favorite lines in the whole movie. We have to leave before one of those things kills Guy. Is one of the funniest things I think Sigourney Weaver, that Lieutenant Madison says.
And it's
so funny.
It's kind of a quietly said line. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's not front and center in the camera when she says it. It's kind of panning sideways. Things are happening around her, and then it just happens. And I'm like, my favorite joke in this movie.
It definitely happens where she's like facing upstage, and then she does a half turn, and by the time she half turns, she's done with the line.
Exactly.
It's so good. It's so good. I freaking love Sigourney Weaver in this movie so much. And this was the other thing where they were like, there was a bunch of stuff where actors were playing against type in this. The two big examples are Sigourney Weaver and Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman, who usually has a tendency to play a villain, has a tendency to play, I mean, to be fair, he's still a foreigner here, but like to play in a comedic setting is totally not his usual up until this point.
Usually he's the villain.
Actually, Dogma came out the same year. You haven't seen Dogma, have you?
I've seen many other movies where he is a villain.
Okay.
You've named literally
Everybody
the one.
drink.
Like, we could have named...
No.
We could have said Die Hard. We could have said... The movie franchise that shall not be named.
We could have.
We could have said so many things.
So the reason I said Dogma is because technically he's not a villain in Dogma either. So like these are like the two movies in his like heyday where he was like not the villain.
I guess. And I mean, you know, he was just kind of off-putting in Sense and Sensibility, right? He wasn't bad. Question mark?
I mean, bad is a harsh... I never think Alan Rickman's bad. Let's be honest.
Hans Gruber is bad.
Hans Gruber is bad. Alan Rickman is a precious puppy who needs to be
beautiful
protected.
Human being.
Just a genuinely good person.
Yes,
like, for his
100%.
entire life.
But Dogma.
So in Dogma, he basically plays a very similar character where he plays the Metatron, which is the voice of God. And his biggest thing the whole time is that how, like, nobody knows who the Metatron is because only diehard, you know, Christians, whatever. Like, one of the first things he says is he introduces himself, and the person he introduces himself has no idea who he is. And he's like, the Metatron. You don't know who you know, I swear, if it's not a movie, you humans have no idea who we are. But like, he is essentially the same character. He's of similar caliber in Dogma, where he plays a character who is very much like trying to hold everything together, but also being like, this isn't really my job. Which I feel is very... I feel like that's very Dr. Lazarus, or at least very, very. Oh wow, what is his name in this movie? Dane?
Alexander.
Yeah, it's very Alexander. Yes, that was the other thing. Alan Rickman specifically asked them not to talk about how the character is knighted. Like, please don't talk about that because that feels weird to me. Like, I don't feel great about that. And I think as a British person, he was very specifically like, no, that's like a big deal. Like, please don't.
This is very serious and we are not going to joke about it.
And we are not going to joke about it.
They just call him Alex throughout the movie.
I know.
Now, since we're talking about Sigourney Weaver and Alan Rickman, I'd asked Joy before this, do you think they were friends in real life? Because I love their little relationship in the movie. Like the scene where she calls him and she's in her robe and he inexplicably still has his headpiece on.
Oh yeah. No, he is never without his headpiece.
I mean,
in
I know,
this entire movie.
But in that scene in particular, they were very clearly done with whatever they were doing and back in their hotel room. So I'm like, I know, but why, Alex?
But why? Why do you still wear it? No one is there to see it.
But I just feel like I felt friend chemistry between them, you know, that I didn't really see between other characters in the movie. Like, as much as they played off of each other so well and all of the jokes landed, they didn't feel like friends.
I definitely got that vibe. I think the two of them, like, being the kinds of actors that they are also, and being... I don't want to say veteran actors because I don't want to discount, like, to be fair,
the litany of other very successful actors who are in this movie.
Yes, it is a long list, friends.
It is
like,
a long list.
Let's not mince words. The cast of this thing is amazing. And if you haven't seen it, again, can't plug it enough. Please go watch this movie. It's amazing. Just of the main cast, like Daryl Mitchell was very young. And originally they weren't going to cast him that young, but then they were like, wouldn't it be cool if he was just like a child prodigy flying a ship?
Oh, okay.
And so like they made him younger in the show. Yes. And I was like, oh, that's so great though, because like obviously this person fit the bill and you just hired him.
Yeah.
And then you had Tony Shalhoub, who most of his scenes weren't even with the main crew because he was down in engineering.
Yep.
Arguably, the only other person that they would have had more chemistry with was Tim Allen. But because Tim Allen has such a strong comedy background, I just think the two, like, they've both done action movies. They've both done very serious roles. Like, I feel like they were the ones who probably jived the most as far as acting credentials and method went. I mean, to be fair, let's not discount Sam Rockwell. Bless that boy. He is super method. Did you know he drank coffee, so much coffee before every take because he wanted to be jittery? Did I already say that on air? I'm saying it again.
No, you did not. You did not say it on air. There's a red thingy moving toward the green thingy.
But like because I found that out so early in my rewatch, I kept seeing these moments where it was like he would just slowly shake.
Oh, he's literally like sitting in a chair. His legs are vibrating and he's white knuckle gripping the back of the chair. You know, like this is
it's so intense. And he's an amazing character actor, but I don't think at that point in 1999 he had done all the things we know Sam Rockwell for. So I think it makes sense that Weaver and Rickman were the ones who just seemed to have a really familiar bond, and their chemistry was amazing. And I was almost sad that they didn't get their own little, like, their own mini romance. Because, like, of course she has to end up with Taggart. And I was like, oh.
I'm not into that at all.
Neither am I.
I mean, you know, there's always a few little things you're not going to like about the movies you love. This was one of mine. I don't like that they ended up together at the end. I think that it would have been so much funnier at the end of the movie if he went in for the kiss the way he did, and then instead of allowing herself to be swooped into...
I know, whatever that was.
Whatever that was, she just backed up again. Like, I mean, she had been doing the entire movie. They could have kept the little scene where both of them thought that they were about to die, because I thought that was really funny. And in a moment of panic, sure, I believe it. I will buy it. But later, when they're done and they know they're safe, I'm not here for it.
Nope. I also was not here for it. I was very here for him, like, inviting them to take that bow, and I really wanted that to be the end of it. Like,
yes.
That would have been the better ending. I mean, also, like, she does all these things where, like, she comes out and she does that high kick. I'm like, wouldn't it have been funny if he, like, tried to swoop her in for a kiss and she just, like, did that thing where, like, she slides under him and then, like, sweeps the leg? And he's just on the floor of the stage and she's like, hi. But this was not that movie.
Not that movie. It was not that movie. That's okay. Well,
it's fine. To be fair, that was another trope, like the captain sweeping the woman into her arms, and then like the music swells as it zooms in on their kiss or whatever.
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean, I know, but he wasn't, in that moment, he wasn't the captain. He was Jason.
Wasn't he? He did just shoot the bad guy who disintegrated, which, by the way, I thought was pretty great. Just disintegrates in front of all these people. It's like, wow, those special effects.
Okay, now we can't not discuss the Thermians at any point.
I know.
In this podcast episode, we must discuss them.
I broke up this movie into certain categories to try and like sort of, I know we're bouncing around a lot, but to see where things landed. Like, I also have like a bunch of Star Trek stuff. I have the villains separately. I have the actors separately. And then I have the Thermians. And the funniest part about that for me is everything under Thermians is basically quotes from Mathazar.
Oh, yes. I mean,
I like
that's
everything Mathazar said.
Mathazar, and I would argue a couple of the other Thermians, are the heart of this movie.
I mean, Quellic is great. Teb is great.
Teb is great. That's what I mean. They're the heart of this movie.
So the premise really works because this alien race of people are extremely trusting and take everything they see at face value, which I also thought was pretty funny because they don't seem to be very visual learners because the way they walk is super not human. But then I was just like, I mean, if you're a cephalopod, maybe you just don't know where arms and legs go.
It's hard, Joy. Imagine if you actually had 10 arms, but then you had to pretend that you only had 4. And by 4, I mean 2 arms and 2 legs.
I mean,
no, but
I
know that they're really naive, but I feel like their naivete, unless we're seeing it through Saris's eyes, because Saris is bad. Yeah. Their naivete isn't often, I don't like to use this word, but stupid. Right. It's good. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, so like I'm going to quote Betty White here real quick. During an interview that Betty White had talking about Rose from the Golden Girls. You've seen the Golden Girls? Maybe? No? We should do
that is a no.
I should show you some episodes of the Golden Girls because I think you'd be really into it. But it's basically a show about 4 older women living in Florida who become
I know
friends.
what it's about. Yeah, I just haven't seen it.
They all become friends because they're cohabitating. And there's Blanche, who's the sexy one. There's Dorothy, who's the very, very smart one. She was like a teacher, and she's living there with her mother. And there's the character of Rose, who grew up in like a mountain town in Appalachia somewhere, who basically just has a bunch of stuff that's like Scandinavian stories that don't make a lot of sense. And she is essentially the idiot, for lack of a better word. And everyone kind of comes down really hard on her. And in an interview, Betty White once said, "She's not stupid. I want you all to know she is not stupid. She is very, 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 very naive." And I feel like I would not be wrong listing the Thermians in this way. The Thermians are just very, to the 9th power, naive. And it's not that they're non-intelligent, because they also built a starship and built a starport and like travel space.
They built a thing that can turn back time. Yeah. It was it was a theory, it was a concept made up for a TV show. And they were like, well, we made it.
We made it. We wanted to ask you guys what this does, because we don't know. We just built it.
Super smart. But then they see this show, and then they build their society after what they feel are the most important parts of the show. And the most important parts of the show are the characters' courage and teamwork and friendship. And my heart just went
through adversity.
Oh!
I know, mine too. I also get super emotional whenever it comes to the part that Taggart's like, it sounds to me like they already have a pretty good commander.
Yes. There were a lot of parts in this movie that I got weirdly emotional at. Probably because I'm PMSing. Which you can leave that in or you can cut that out. It is a special time in which Danielle is more emotional, and so there were many parts in this movie.
It is a special monthly moment. This monthly moment brought to you by...
Even that moment where Mathadart sees them all for the first time, and he goes, Laredo, how you've grown. I was like, oh.
I know. No, my favorite part about that is like how he's like the top of the mountain and how it filters out to all the other Thermians around him.
Yeah.
And as they like in awe of the people they're meeting, just whisper their names.
Yes. Laredo.
Dick Sargent. Like, my favorite is Tech Sergeant Chen because like in my fanon brain, Tech Sergeant Chen is basically there, like everybody picks their favorite from Star Trek.
Yes.
And it depends, like some people like Bones, some people like Spock, some people like Kirk, some people like Scotty. And this is a very Scotty crew because they were like, oh, we're all engineers. Like,
they're science. This is the science vessel, the science officers. Oh, yeah. They're very into that.
100%.
He's in engineering, which I understand is different. Don't at me. I've seen the Star Treks. However,
just saving you the tweets.
This reminds me of those scenes in Discovery where something amazing is happening outside the window and literally the entire ship gathers by the windows to watch.
Yes.
That is this vessel.
That is this vessel. That is basically this vessel.
And then, of course, there's Quellic, whose favorite character is Dr. Lazarus, who is the actual science officer.
Who's the actual, who is in fact the science officer and the only alien crew member from the show, like in the canon of the show. So I was actually surprised that there weren't a lot more Dr. Lazarus fans because you would think that that's meant to be like the alien representation. And then I realized, no, that's my human brain trying to
because for the aliens, what's most exotic are the humans.
The humans. My favorite thing is like there's, like, so you mentioned the Omega-13, which they just freaking built.
They just built it.
Because they canned. It's like the crew didn't even build that. The crew freaking found that thing. So like, where did you get? It's fine.
How did Justin Long's character and all of his friends know that it was a matter of rearranging? It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. No, but like, so we have the Omega-13. We also have a couple other things where like their food replicators actually
I love
replicate things. Yeah, they replicate things super well. Like they know what a steak is. And I'm like, they've never been introduced to a steak. Though.
And it tastes just like a steak.
Which made
and
me
Tommy
go.
Weber. Yes. Made you go. Continue.
Well, yes, it made me go, do the cup blood ticks actually exist in the universe somewhere?
They must. Or they don't.
Must,
Who
right?
knows?
Or they don't.
But actually...
Like,
okay. I like that Tommy Weber's character was like holding a French fry, just kind of for quite a few of his scenes. I was like, what is he eating over there? I couldn't see. I couldn't really tell.
I also like that guy had like a super weird piece of spaghetti or something.
Like a noodle. Well, it looked like a rice noodle, except that he choked on it. So I was like, well, rice noodles wouldn't do that because they would just disintegrate, right?
Right.
Did you notice that Tony Shalhoub's character was eating with chopsticks?
I did not! Oh,
no! It didn't show me... I couldn't see what he was eating. But he was for sure eating with chopsticks.
Wow. Like, just wow. So much wow.
Okay.
I'm actually taking another look at my notes, but if you have something to address.
I don't have to address anything. I can just randomly roll through scenes I thought were funny. You know, I could just go like, caw, Jason, they're coming. You know, I can just say things until.
Oh, the thing. So one of the other themes I really liked tended to be the weird reduction of the entertainment industry of like, they're just liars.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, yes, in this context, in this very specific context, like this to me is like the biggest cultural misunderstanding of like, you're not going to get it. You know?
Yeah, but you know, he came around by the end of the movie. It took him all of 2 hours, you know?
Well, I do think Mathesar still thinks they're messing with him.
I mean, aren't they?
Aren't they?
Weren't they?
I mean, they were.
They were. He's not wrong. He just doesn't understand the entertainment industry. But he'll get there. He'll figure it out, you know?
He'll figure it out.
So I feel like a similar fourth wall moment is that entire bit with the chompers.
Oh, I know. Speaking of, well, screw that.
Speaking of, well, screw that.
This episode was badly written.
Why is this here? It doesn't make any logical sense.
Because it was in the show. I'm not doing it. This episode was badly written. Whoever wrote this episode should die. That is also one of my favorite lines.
I know I know it's a silly joke, but I love it. Okay, wait. Now, since this movie is a tribute to not only Star Trek but to Trekkies,
yes,
we should probably end by discussing their fans.
Yes. Yeah, the convention. There were a couple interesting things here, too, because I think it was Alan Rickman who said something like, oh, yeah, the scenes where we had to be at conventions hit a little home for me. Oh. And he was a little like, it's a little too close to home.
Oh, no. Do you mean like, wait, which parts? Because, I mean, he's an amazing actor, so obviously
yes.
This could just be him acting, but he really did look genuinely annoyed every time he had to repeat the line that we shall not say.
I know.
Because no, we're not doing fan service, listeners. Go watch this movie.
Yes.
But,
I mean,
watch the movie
anyway.
And saying, yes. But, you know, when people kept on coming up to him and saluting and attempting to say the line that he hates,
I know.
grabbing the photographs out of their hands.
I know. I don't think it was, I think his was more because, you know, he's a very quiet British man, like Alan Rickman himself. So I feel like he wasn't quite as aggro about it, but I'm sure in his own head it was a little bit like these are crowds and they are large and they're like all fans, like looking at us like fans do, you know?
I guess. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was going to say, I couldn't really see him tapping into the part of his character that was like, I'm Richard III. What am I doing here? I got 5 curtain calls. You know, I'm above saying this line that everyone wants me to say. Right.
I mean, to be fair, I think Hans Gruber has a couple of lines that I'm sure people have been like, hey, Alan Rickman, please say the thing. I can think of a few off, you know, just say John McClane, like over and over again. So the thing about the conventions I thought was super great. I really enjoyed all the cosplay. I enjoyed the, like, this is how you know it was 1999. Who waiting in line to get an autograph for $15 a pop? And then I was also like, how the mighty have fallen that you don't have your own, like, bathroom backstage. You know? Like, you're going to the bathroom surrounded by all your fans. This seems like a security issue, Jason.
Oh, yeah.
Don't go in there. I really enjoyed the level of different cosplay also, like that was never even explained because there wasn't a lot of time to talk about it, right? So there were just like a bunch of these particular aliens, a bunch of those particular aliens, a lot of like cosplay of like Lieutenant Madison And
Dr. Lazarus all over the place.
Yes, Dr. Lazarus all over the place.
I like the person in the front row who is cosplaying as Dr. Lazarus, but you could definitely still see their hair sticking out from underneath the head part.
Yes. This is a costume piece that I put on just for this. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
I enjoyed that immensely. A few of the other Star Trek tropes, they called themselves Questerians, which I thought was great because like Trekkies and Questerians, I thought that was super cute.
Mm-hmm.
I did appreciate that they let guys sit at their table to sign autographs.
They did. They were like, you know what? Sure. Why not? Everyone's here for the commander anyway.
Exactly. And it spoke to me personally for a lot of the conventions I've been to where they will have, a side character that someone liked or maybe someone who was only in one episode and like whatever. Mm-hmm. Like they will do that where they're like, here's another actor who was on the show signing autographs for people. And they're just so happy to be there that it almost doesn't even matter. I think that just about covers it. Oh, the NSEA protector I really liked because, the Star Trek Enterprise NC 1701. And
yes.
Whatever it is. It's fine. The Trekkies will come for me, but it's fine.
Sorry,
1701A or something.
I mean, listen. I like the parts of Star Trek that I've seen. I have not seen all of the Star Trek that is available in the universe. But listen, that's the gag.
And this actually leads perfectly into my one more thing, where this is currently streaming on Paramount Plus. You know what else Paramount Plus has? Mm-hmm. All of the Star Trek.
Yes.
But no, now all of the Star Trek is in one place. And also, as Nella likes to call this, the best Star Trek movie is also in one place. I just really think that's cute. Did you have one more thing? Anything that we didn't get to?
Not a specific one. Like I said, if you were just like, Danielle, vamp for 10 minutes, I could literally scroll through my notes and just list 12 more scenes that we didn't have time to discuss and that I really liked.
I mean, especially...
What if I just... Movie MVP, Kyle, who knows the utility tunnel system better than anyone alive. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle.
For your service.
High schooler.
I love that the fans saved the heroes in this movie. That's one of my absolute favorite things about it. And I don't think we said it yet. So there you go. That's my one more thing.
Yeah. No, just Justin Long as Brendan and his team of nerds, who I absolutely adore.
Who all gathered together to scene where Justin Long is running out to throw out the garbage and yelling at his mom. I just don't think you understand the severity of this situation. Everything about it is perfect.
Also, can we talk about how the parents are like watching, I guess, the news or something, and the convention is on the TV, and all I could think of was, did you watch Galaxy Quest with your parents as a child? Like, are they also Questerians, but in that way that parents are like, I'm just not as into it as my kid is.
Right. Oh, sure, if it's on TV, I'll watch it every now and then.
I don't know the sequence. I don't have a map of a ship, the 3D rendering of the ship on my computer. I don't have that.
I don't quite understand how in episode whatever it was... Did they ever give the episode number for the question that they were trying to ask the commander at the beginning of the show?
Oh.
I mean, beginning of the movie.
Unsure.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, his parents wouldn't really understand that Deck B is independent of the guidance matrix, and so there's this huge question. How did this possibly?
It's just a TV show, Brennan.
Until it isn't.
It's all real. I knew it. We could just spend the next additional hour quoting the movie, so I think we should cut it there. That feels good. That feels good to me.
That feels good. That feels great. All right, everyone. We would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what is your favorite Star Trek trope? You can email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. Don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/clockpod.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, Tell the Thermians in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.